So this is the second Keats poem in the last couple days of class. We did Tuesday. On Thursday, we did To One Who's Been Long in City Pent. And he mentions in that poem about the speaker going off and finding some pleasant lair of wavy grass, and reads a debonair and gentle tale of love and languishment. This poem, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, is such a tale of love and languishment. The title, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, means the beautiful lady without mercy, or the beautiful lady without pity, it can be translated, right? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 12 or so stanzas. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose, fast withereth too. So it begins with a question by a speaker, and then in the fourth stanza, the person being addressed responds. The knight at arms is the one who says, I met a lady. So look at those first three stanzas again. So what are we told about the knight at arms? That just means a knight on horseback. He's alone and palely loitering, and we're told he's near a lake, and the lake, the grass that grows near the lake, has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. The fact that the grass is withered and no birds sing is telling us the time of year. It's probably fall, all right? Grass dies in the fall, birds fly south. So the second stanza, we get a little bit more. So we've been told in the first stanza, the knight at arms is alone and pale. He's lost all color. And he's loitering. To loiter means to wait for something. Second stanza, what can ail thee? So something's wrong. So haggard and so woe begone. Haggard implies, get off there, lean. The face is drawn, like he's gone without food and water for several days. So why are you so haggard and woebegone? The squirrel's granary is full. That is, the squirrel is prepared for the coming fall and winter, and the harvest is done. Why are you so haggard? Why are you so pale, so drawn, apparently so hungry? And then the speaker says, I see a lily on thy brow. That is, it doesn't mean like a white spot. It means your brow is very white, with anguish moist and fever dew. The knight is troubled by something, but is feverish. The moistness is sweat. And on thy cheeks a fading rose, fast withereth too. The fading rose is not implying like the knight has been blushing. It's just the natural color of the face is draining. Okay? And it's draining quickly. And then the knight responds. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, that is very, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. Okay? So this is a fairy's child that the knight meets. Long hair, foot was light, meaning she almost danced everywhere. She barely touched the ground. And her eyes were wild. Why does she have wild eyes? It's like they're darting everywhere. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, in fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. Okay? So, he uses natural things from the environment, like we saw in The Passionate Shepherd to His Love by Christopher Marlowe, who said, come live with me and be my love, and I will, make you a bed of roses and make you a kirtle out of sheep's wool and all that kind of stuff. So I made a garland for her head, a wreath like a crown, bracelets for both arms, and a belt to go around her middle. She looked at me as she did love and made sweet moan. He's not talking about moaning in sex. He's talking about as she did love, as she loved me and she moaned. The moan might imply she's speaking, but he doesn't understand what she's saying exactly because she's a fairy or elf, if you want. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy song. So why does the knight not see anything else? So he puts her on his horse. So horseback's here, she's up here, she looks down at him, and as they walk, he's only looking at her. He doesn't notice anything else. And what does she do? She leans down and sings a fairy song. I think that's right, he's looking at her. He's become enthralled. He's become enchanted with her. She found me roots of relish sweet, honey wild, manna-dew, all natural things again. And sure in language strange, she said, I love thee true. Sure in language strange, she said, meaning, I don't know her language. But, what does the sure mean? Because notice she said, sure in language she said, I love thee true. What does he mean is sure there? You'll hear all the time, someone will say something like, well, surely you must know. Well, what does that surely mean? You think they know, but you're not positive. Sure in language strange, she said, that is, I'm pretty sure what she was saying is, I love you. She took me to her elfengrot cave, and there she wept and sighed full sore. And there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses 4. So he kisses each of her eyes twice. And notice, she weeps and sighs. He kisses her eyes to comfort her. He doesn't know why she's crying. And there she lulled me asleep with her singing, and there I dreamed. Oh, woe betide. Woe betide. Woe's pretty clear. The betide is woe the time. Because the time, since that time of her singing, the latest dream I ever dreamed on the cold hillside. That is, from the moment she lulled him asleep, he's only had one dream. And this is the dream. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors. Death pale were they all. Okay, death pale means they were dead. They cried, La Belle Dame Sans Merci hath thee in thrall. You are enslaved to her. I saw their starved lips in the gloam. Gloam means darkness. With horrid warning gaped wide. And I awoke and found me here on the cold hill's side. Why are their mouths gaping open? Probably because something has happened that has taken their life and they die like in fright. And he woke up and found himself there on the cold hillside. It's the second time we've heard the cold hillside referenced. And this is why I sojourn here alone and palely loitering, though the sedge has withered from the lake and no birds sing. Why is he there? Okay. The elfin lady, the fairy lady, has him in thrall. He has these dreams of these dead kings, and he says, and that's why I'm here. So what's he palely loitering for? What's he waiting for? Is he waiting for her to come back? Or is this the process of death and dying? Is he dying? Or is he already dead? Notice, though the sedge has withered from the lake. He says, this is why I sojourn here. Sojourn, travel, journey, alone and palely loitering. though the sedge, that is, it's like I've waited through spring, summer, and now it's the end of fall, and no birds are singing. I think it's because he's dead. Anyways, go from there to Dover Beach, 674. This is by Matthew Arnold, 19th century writer, essayist, critic, and such. This poem is largely, not entirely, largely about the loss of faith. Okay? And what the loss of faith means and does to the world, so to speak. So it's in 4 stanzas. The first one's the longest. And the story, or setting if you want, is a man and a woman are in a room on the coast of England, overlooking the English Channel, looking across the channel to the coast of France. Okay? And apparently, the speaker is male, and he's gone to the window to look at the view. She is somewhere else in the room. We're never going to hear her speak, all right? So in one sense, it's a dramatic monologue, or it might be an apostrophe where someone is speaking to an imagined hearer. When you have the time, click on the link in the syllabus and read the parody of this poem, The Dover Bitch by Anthony Hecht, okay? I'll give a brief synopsis of it when we finish. So it begins. And this one echoes several things we've read before, especially Sophocles. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full, that is, it's all the way up. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand, glimmering and vast, out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen! You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand. Begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Let's stop there for a moment. Those last few lines, the sound is meant to emphasize the ebb and flow of the ocean. As it comes in, rolls back out. Comes in, rolls back out. You get that begin and cease and then again begin. Okay? So, speaker's looking out the window. He sees it's high tide. There's a reflection of the moon on the water. And he thinks of the high tide, and he thinks the cliffs of England, standing, glimmering and strong and bright. Come to the window, smell the sweet night air. And then the speaker launches into a somewhat not a joyous, let's say, appreciation for the vision that he sees. You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. This is not like a beach in Florida. A lot of beaches in England, they do have some sandy beaches. The ones I've been to have all been rocky, all right? But they're smooth rocks. So when they move up and down, they sound like almost like rocks on a washboard or a rough thing that, right? And they're thrown up, and they come back, and they roll up, and they come back with tremulous cadence slow, and bring, and this is a link, a transition to the next stanza, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. How? How does the sound of just listening to the beach make you think of eternal sadness? Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, that is, the eternal note of sadness. And it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea, So what is the turbid ebb and flow of human misery that Sophocles thought or heard at the sound of the ocean? How does he conclude Oedipus the King? Count no man happy or blessed until he dies free of pain at last. That's the turbid flow of human misery. The speaker is suggesting that Sophocles' experience of life, or the experience of life that Sophocles portrays in his plays, is just one moment of misery after another until you die. In other words, it's like the ocean coming in and out. Comes in, it goes away. You get like a little respite, and then more misery, and then it goes away again, and then more misery. He says, we also find in that sound a thought. Hearing it by our northern sea, here's the thought. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. The sea of faith, okay? Probably specifically referring to Christian faith, but more generally, all religious faith, okay? Notice, he says, it was once full, like the tide is full. It's high tide. And what did it do? It lay like a bright girdle furled around the edges of the earth's shore. But now the speaker only hears what? The ebbing, as it were, of the flow of the ocean. And with that ebbing, that sound of those stones rolling backwards, being pulled back into the ocean, equates that with a melancholy, long withdrawing roar. Melancholy means meditative, depressing, sad. Withdrawing roar. Why a roar? The roar's like, you fall. It's that kind of sound. Retreating to the breath of the night wind. How loud, he's talking about a literal like wind. How the breath of the night wind is like it's light. It barely can be heard. Down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. So what has happened to the sea of faith? Or what has happened to religious belief? It's retreated. And it kind of retreated, yelling and screaming, but now it's like a whisper in the night. Notice the date that this is written, 1867, okay? The height of the Industrial Revolution. And not quite the pinnacle, but getting close to the pinnacle of what? The results of the Age of Enlightenment. Age of Enlightenment began in the 17th century, founding of the Royal Society in England, this emphasis on science, in learning, discoveries in the fields of chemistry and physics, electricity, Ben Franklin with his kite and such, rise of factories and the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution. You had the Industrial Revolution. In 1859, another Englishman publishes a very important book. It's still extremely important today because of its effect in what's called intellectual history. Charles Darwin publishes On the Origin of Species. What is one of the effects of On the Origin of Species? Well, he argues there what? Evolution. It might be, though Darwin never suggested this. Darwin never suggested humanity arose from ultimately single cell, organisms. But the developing idea was that we are really nothing different than the rest of the animal kingdom. Okay? Part of the withdrawing roar of religion, the church taught man is made in the image of God, and here we have this new idea that no, we have arisen from lower beings. Okay? Then you get stanza 4. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. So the speaker is addressing the woman, let's say, in the room. For the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. So, speaker says, let us be true to one another. What does true mean there? Faithful, loyal, okay? Why? Because the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new. So what does that mean? It seems to appear that way before us. The verb seems, we've talked a lot about. It's subjunctive. Indicates a condition contrary to fact. It seems to be this way, but it isn't. So let's be true to each other, because even though the world looks to be this way, it isn't. It, the real world, has no joy, no love, no light, no certainty, no peace, and no help for pain. So what does it have if it doesn't have any of those? We're back at Sophocles, with Sophocles at the Aegean Sea, thinking about the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. And we are here as on a darkling plain. That is a plain that is pitch black, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight. What are the confused alarms? Where ignorant armies clash by night. What are the ignorant armies? Competing visions of the world? Competing understandings? What is the speaker saying? They don't know. They don't have a clue. It's dark. They can't see anything. And yet they're doing what? They're staking a claim in the ground saying, this is true. And the other one says, no, this is true. And they're fighting over their battles. And the speaker is saying, and we are stuck in the middle. What are the battles? What are at least one of the possible battles? Claims of science, knowledge, etc. Claims of faith, belief, etc. But they're both ignorant. Why? Because they're both on a darkling plane. They both don't understand. And the speaker is saying, hey, honey, let's be true to each other. Let's pretend as if we can be faithful and honest and all that. Why do I say pretend? Because we know there is no real joy, there is no real love, there is no real light, there is no real certitude, there is no real peace, there is no real help for pain. So if all that's true, life sucks and then you die. That's pretty bleak. Okay? It's extremely bleak. Like I said, then read Dover Bitch. Dover Bitch, Anthony Hecht, American poet, husband of Sylvia Plath. They both committed suicide, if I remember correctly. He writes a parody called The Dover Bitch, and it's about the woman that is hearing this. And it kind of begins, Matthew and Arnold and I, we would get together every now and then, blah, blah, blah. Or it's different perspective. And he would call me up, we'd get together once a year, we'd go to this thing, and, but he'd start philosophizing about, and all I wanted was sex. Just some good sex. But, he'd show up and he'd bring me some expensive perfume and we'd have a good time. But I felt like I was kind of a cosmic joke to him. Or take it back, not a cosmic joke. I was a means to alleviating the cosmic joke of existence. I brought him a little bit of happiness in his otherwise bleak life. It's quite an interesting parody. Okay, so go from there to this one. Next one's also a bit sad isn't the right word. Poignant. This is by Wilfred Owen, 1893-1918. So he was 25. Notice his death date. It's during World War I. He died in the war. All right. Owen is one of a fairly large number of British and other nationality men who fought in World War I and who wrote poetry also. And some of their poems are about that experience. Okay, Dulce et Decorum Est, the title, comes from a longer passage from the Roman poet Horace. Okay, the last line of the poem I'm going to go to for just a second. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, which means, or is translated, it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. Dulce, beautiful, et and decorum, fitting, appropriate, right, is on behalf of the country to die, is what that means. All right? It's a very Roman and later British idea that, if you are called upon to fight in a war for your country, you should do that for honor, etc. So Wilfred Owen gives us an image, probably an image he had direct experience of. This is an actual image of what happens when someone dies from mustard gas poisoning. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. Till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Let's stop there. He's describing soldiers on a march. They've been in battle, and they've turned their backs now on that battle, or the battle is concluded, and they're making their way back to some kind of encampment. Everything he describes here, we have other accounts of people saying the same thing. You can actually I think there might be some from World War I. I've seen it of soldiers in World War II, where you can watch a video of soldiers marching, and they are literally asleep. Their bodies just know what to do because they've done it so much. Okay? They're walking without boots because they don't have supplies. Your feet are wrapped in sodden cloth, and it is red from the blood of their feet bleeding. Okay? Deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. That is, behind them, and they're moving away from them, but it doesn't matter with gas shells. Notice, gas shells. And then the speaker catches himself. Gas. Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. I don't know if you've ever seen a World War I chemical kit that soldiers would carry. Heavy masks, big tube that fit to something else, and it was a pain to get on. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Lime's an acid. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. The glass on the mask is green colored, right? That's why he sees him in a green light. And as under a green sea. What does that last phrase imply? Under a green sea, like the man is drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his hanging face, like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cut of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie. We'll get to the lie in just a second. So, the images that he describes are exactly the symptoms of how one dies from mustard gas poisoning. It dissolves your lungs, and it burns as it does so. So, they throw him in the wagon for one reason. He's still breathing, but he's dead. His consciousness is still there, but for all intents and purposes, he just hasn't stopped breathing yet. There's no saving someone who starts to suffer from mustard gas poisoning. They're going to die. All you can do is try to ease their pain. But he's in a wagon, and the wagon is going over the ruts. And every time the wagon hard wheel hits a rut, it does that. And they go, and froth comes out of the mouth. This image is what the speaker says. This is what I see every time I dream. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It is beautiful and fitting to die for one's country. Is his point? There is no honor in dying for one's. That's not his point. His point is, don't tell the lie that it's beautiful. Talk to any veteran who's been in horrendous battle, and they'll say, there's no beauty in it. It is horrible. It is ugly. It is foul. One of my ancestors said, cousin, war is hell. That's why Sherman tried to break the back of the South. He wanted to end it as quickly as possible. That's what Owen means, okay, with the calling the Dulce et decorum est a lie. There too. 3 sonnets by Shakespeare, so we'll end pretty early. 780. Shakespeare wrote 154 sonnets. Probably began in the mid-1590s. We don't know exactly when. We don't have any of them survive in his own handwriting. They were first published in 1609, I believe. We don't know that Shakespeare was responsible for the publishing. There's a very enigmatic letter at the beginning of that version of the sonnets that talks about the person who was responsible for getting the sonnets or the person who was the inspiration for the sonnets. It's not clear who that letter is to. It's not clear who wrote the letter. That is, if it was Shakespeare, we don't know anything about if the order of these sonnets is what Shakespeare intended. Okay? Pardon?
Do you think that was on purpose?
Probably. I mean, more than likely, if Shakespeare wanted to publish them, he would have published them. He wrote 4 other long poems that are written under his name. Those were written for powerful, influential people. Okay, they were patronizing him. They were essentially paying him to do that. One of those people is possibly alluded to in this letter. There's a set of initials, to the Honorable W.H., and there's been all kinds of stuff, investigation, who the W.H. stands for, and we don't know exactly who it stands for, okay? But we do know the sonnets probably, at least some of them, circulated privately, because other people in the late 1590s, before they get published, other people referred to Shakespeare's sugared sonnets, meaning their sweet sonnet, or his sweet sonnets, all right? So this one, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? This is sonnet 19. So, in these sonnets, 1 through roughly 125, and then 126 through the end, are about, or addressed to, loosely speaking, 2 different people. So you have the speaker of the sonnets, and 2 other people. G.H.W. is the golden-haired youth, a young man, okay? The D.L. is the dark lady, a black woman, all right? The first 125, for the most part, are to or about the speaker's relationship with this handsome, blonde young man, right? The first 20 of them are all about one thing. They're telling the young man, go have children. Have lots of children. For the simple reason that this guy is so drop-dead gorgeous. He's just handsome. And the speaker is saying, make more of you. Make more people that look like you. The very first sonnet begins, from fairest creatures we desire increase. Fairest creatures. From beautiful creatures. Beautiful cows, beautiful sheep, beautiful flowers, etc. Beautiful people. I mean, after all, why do people spend so much time watching stuff like award ceremonies where you have the beautiful people of Hollywood and the music industry, etc., show up on the red carpet, and the women all decked out to the nines, and the men are all... We want to see those people have children, so to speak. We don't want ugly people to have more children. Why? Because they make more ugly people, generally speaking, okay? Sorry to be bold about it or blunt about it. So 1 through 20, the speaker is telling this person, have as many children as you have. Why? The speaker is going to suggest, because when you get old like me, the speaker implies that he is older than this person. You're going to have wrinkles. You're going to be saggy. And people are going to ask you, golden-haired youth, when you're old like I am, where's your beauty now? What happened to you? I was watching a show last night, had the actress Linda Hamilton on it. If you've seen any of the, not Transformer, Terminator movies, the original, like the first and second one, she's the heroine, she's John Connor's mother, etc., etc. She was pretty good looking back in the 80s. We're in the 2020s, 40 years ago. She's extremely wrinkled. She's probably about my age, actually, maybe a little bit older. she's a lot more wrinkled than I am. I mean, looks like a Shar-Pei. A lot of wrinkled dog, all right? He's saying, when you are older, people are going to say, what happened? And if you have a whole bunch of kids, you can go, here's my beauty, and here's my beauty. Here's how I spent my beauty by making more, okay? 1 through 126 through the end are largely to or about the speaker's relationship with the dark lady, black woman, and or their relationship. Because these two are both friends with this one, they get introduced at some point, and they hook up, which causes problems for the speaker. Because the speaker is now lost. I read the poems in a kind of a traditional manner. The speaker is lost his best friend. This person is also of a higher status. Okay? And he's also lost his lover. So there's also a lot of very negative stuff. Like, you know, you better be careful because she's going to give you an STD. And that burning you, yeah, that's what happens. Okay? So, this sonnet, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, this is sonnet 19. So this is the last, towards the very end, of those encouraging the golden-haired youth to go out and have children. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Wait, no, this is sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. So that's end of line 8, line 9. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. When in eternal time, man, I cannot read today. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. Okay, we'll stop there for a moment. Now, this is an English or Shakespearean sonnet by the structure, by the rhyme scheme. But Shakespeare does use the Italian volta at the end after line 8, beginning of line 9. So let's look at those first two quatrains, first two four-lined rhymes. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So he says, you are more lovely and more temperate. Temperate means even-keeled. How do we know? Because rough winds shake the darling buds of May. The buds are the brand new flowers that haven't opened up, and rough winds shake them, and the implication is knock them off so they die. In summer's lease, the amount of time that summer lasts, hath all too short a date. So May is kind of the beginning months of warm weather in England, but it doesn't last long. I listen to a station, it's an internet station essentially, Classic FM. It's out of London. They play beautiful classic music, and they talk all the time about the weather. Because if you're in England, you know, when it starts warming up, I mean, they start getting excited because winters are pretty cold and they last long, and summer doesn't last very long. By the end of August, it is already starting to cool off. I mean, you're getting temperatures in the 30s in October throughout most of England. Okay, that's what summer's lease hath all too short a date. Next stanza. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. Eye of heaven, the sun, sometimes it gets too hot. When it's hot in England, it is unbearable. Even more so in Shakespeare's day than today, because today, at least some places have air conditioning, but not many. When I was first in London in 1995, that summer was, at that point, the hottest summer ever on record. And it was humid. It just was absolutely disgusting, okay? When I was there again in 2003, it was the hottest summer on record. The day we flew out of London, London hit 101 degrees. You can't get ice hardly anywhere in London. It's like they don't know the recipe for making ice. Very few places have air conditioning. So when it's hot, it's unbearable. And sometimes, notice, often is his gold complexion dimmed. That is, clouds. I love going to London when it's cloudy and wet during the summer, when it's 65, 67, because Murfreesboro is definitely not that during the summer. And every fair from fair sometime declines. Every fair, that means every beautiful thing declines from being beautiful. If I were to show you a picture of me at your ages, you would not recognize me. I don't look anything like I did. I've got friends who are spitting image of what they look like. Why? Because I've declined from that fair. Why do these things decline? By chance or nature's changing course. I love this last word. Untrimmed. Chance or nature's changing course untrim us. What the hell does that mean? We only use that verb trim or untrimmed in two contexts today. They both have to do with holidays. One is Thanksgiving and one is Christmas. The Thanksgiving feast with all the trimmings. What are the trimmings? Those are all the things you add to it to make it even richer. Okay? And to trim a Christmas tree, that does not mean to clip the branches so that it's a perfect pyramid. That means the decoration. What are you doing? You are increasing its beauty. Thanksgiving feast with all the trimmings means in the increasing of the feast. So untrimmed means what? Removing the beauty. I mean, good example, Linda Hamilton that I mentioned. She's been untrimmed by age, by time. Time does it to all of us. But there's the volta. There's the turn. So the first 8 lines are all about, should I compare you to a summer's day? The implication is no. Why? Because summer's days don't last. But thy eternal summer shall not fade. Why? Because it's eternal. It will live on. We don't know how yet. We're going to get that in the final 2 lines. Nor lose possession of that fair, that beauty thou owest. That is, that you own. Your beauty will never be lost. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. That's a pun. When in eternal lines to time thou growest. Well, she's only in her 60s. She's not at eternity yet, but she's already got lines on her face. So, the more lines you get, the more... No. He's not talking about physical lines on the face. He's talking about poetic lines. So long as men can breathe, their eyes can see, so long lives this what? This poem. And this gives life to thee. This poem was published 1608, 1609, and here we are almost 416 years later. We're still reading it. And we can still, on the basis of these poems, we can create a mental image of what the golden-haired youth looks like. You can't just from this one alone, but the others we can. All right? The next one, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. This is Sonnet 130. So this is talking about the dark lady. Sting, the singer, wrote an album titled My Mistress' Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun, okay, where he kind of takes the idea from this song. Now, what Shakespeare does in this one is he creates an anti-blazon. The blazon is a map or catalog of beauty, right? We saw that hinted at with Marvell's To His Queen Mistress, where he says, you know, I'll give 100 years to adore your forehead and your eyes, and 200 for each breast and 30,000 for the rest. He's moving downward. So traditionally in a blazon, you'll talk about the person's eyes, skin color, forehead, nose, hair, teeth, lips, etc. Usually in the sonnet tradition, what the speaker discusses is the beloved's beauty, and if the beloved is a woman, her godlikeness, her being like the goddess of beauty or the goddess of desire. And she's portrayed in a way that no normal woman would be portrayed. She's so far out of this world, so unreachable, right? That's another thing that Shakespeare inverts in this sonnet. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. He does that because the beloved's eyes are usually described as being like the sun. What happens when you look at the sun? You're blinded. What happens if we look at the beloved's eyes? You're blinded by her beauty. So, my mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why, then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. So let's stop with that quatrain. So they're nothing like the sun in that they're not bright. They're dark. How more red is coral than human lips? Let's leave her lips alone for a moment. How red is coral when we usually see it?
Pretty bright.
Where? Where is coral bright red? When it's alive. What happens to coral if you cut it off of its reef and set it here and leave it here for a month? All that color fades, like the knight at arms, palely loitering, and the color is drifting out of his. So, if coral is far more red than her lips are red, and yet Shakespeare's only experience of coral can have been someone who had gone down to essentially the tropics and found coral and brought it back, and he saw it in London. That's a journey of at least a month or so. That coral is not going to be very red. It might be a bright pink, okay? But it's more red than her lips. So her lips are not red at all. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. Dun is, no, that won't work. I used to have a kind of a grayish, dirty, brownish handkerchief. Dun is like the color of dirty laundry water or dirty dishwater. Not appealing at all, okay? What he means is she's not white. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. Her hair is kinky. Second stanza. I have seen roses damasked red and white. Damask means very colored, variously colored, all right? But no such roses see I in her cheeks. Can't tell when she blushes because of the color of her skin. And in some perfume, my absolute favorite line from Shakespeare, and in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. What does reek mean? It's the smell you get at the bottom of a trash container after it has had vegetable waste and other stuff, beer bottles, dripping out, sitting in the hot sun for a couple of days, okay? First time I was in New Orleans, it was summer. And there had been some big thing the night before. I was walking, my wife and I were walking down Bourbon Street, and it was just the smell of ripe vomit everywhere. Okay? That's the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak. Yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. So she doesn't have a nice voice. I always use the example, if you're familiar with the TV show, I never watched it, but I know this much about it. The TV show The Nanny with Fran Drescher. And has a very nasally voice. That's kind of what's being described. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And that's the point. All these other sonneteers, and there's half dozen or so others before Shakespeare in the English tradition who wrote sequences, all these other sonneteers are depicting their beloveds as goddesses. The perfection of beauty, the perfection of morality, the perfection of virtue. He says, I never saw a goddess. My mistress, when she walks, she treads on the ground. And there's an implication with those words. That she's a ground walker, meaning a street walker, a prostitute. Okay? Final couplet. Final couplet is the summation. And yet, that is nevertheless, by heaven, that's an oath, that's a swearing, I think my love as rare as any she, belied with false compare. My love, that is the person I love, as well as my love for her, but it's primarily the person I love, she is as rare, as original, as unique, as not to be found anywhere else, as any she, that is woman or lady, belied, lied about, with false comparison. What is the speaker really saying? Is he really saying, I'm in love with a black woman whose breath just reeks, who has a horrible voice, and all this other stuff, and is a hooker, a whore? No. His point is, he uses the anti-blazon to say, my lover is two things. One, real, and two, she can't be compared with anyone. Okay? Very last one, 1064. This is actually, I'm going to add one too, because we have time. I'm going to add this won't be on the quiz because I've already got the quiz up. Quiz is due tomorrow night. Last quiz. All it is titles. You name the author. Okay. I'm going to add Sonnet 116. It might show up on the final exam. So we'll do that first, and then we'll do that time of year thou mayst in me behold. So Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Okay, stop there. I have no idea, never noticed that before, why your book has a space break after line 9. That is strange. So, look at the first quatrain. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. There is a passage in the English, the Anglican wedding ceremony for a couple to be married that says, if anyone knows any reason or has any impediment as to why these two should not be married, let him or her speak now or forever hold his peace. Okay? You also have in the English tradition, this is part of that, what's called the banns. The banns are part of the wedding process, and this was an announcement made by the priest of a church, Anglican priest, or Catholic priest before Protestant church came in, that said, where the priest would stand up and say, so-and-so are going to be married on such and such a date. If anyone knows any reason, and would read essentially that, if anyone knows any reason why they shouldn't get married, speak now. That would be done over 3 successive Sundays. And then the marriage would happen on the 4th Sunday. Okay? So this is alluding to that. But notice this is the marriage of what? True minds. True meaning faithful, loyal to each other. Christ, let me not means I won't admit. I don't think there are any impediments to the marriage of true minds. And the speaker goes on to explain. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds or bends with the remover to remove. So, you have lover A, beloved B. Say man and woman. Let's say she cheats on him. I'm playing upon the medieval and Renaissance notion of women being false. So she goes after C. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. So his love for B is not love if it finds that this love has altered, okay, which alters when it alteration finds. F you. You don't love me anymore? Fine. Therefore, what this one felt or expressed as love for this one isn't love. All right? Or bends with the remover, this one, to move. Bends doesn't mean goes after it. Bends means turns away from it. So what's the speaker saying? If I and my wife, who've been married almost 39 years, love each other, and I suddenly cheat on her and she says, F you, I want a divorce, the speaker is saying her expression shows it was never real love. If she says, I forgive you, I still love you, then it's love. How mind-blowing is that for our society? No, love, is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth unknown, although his height be taken. That is, love is a reference point. Okay? Ever fixed, notice. It looks on tempests. Why? Because the tempests are down here. Love is something outside. And we get the next 2 lines. It's the star to every wandering bark. In the northern hemisphere, it's the North Star. Why? Because if you are in the northern hemisphere and you have a clear sky at night, you can find the North Star anywhere on the surface of the globe. And with that North Star, you can navigate. Think of Donne's valediction forbidding mourning. What does the speaker say about the woman the speaker is leaving behind? You will be my fixed point. No matter how far I wander, as long as you stay here, you will draw me back. Okay? Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. What are rosy lips and cheeks? Other people who come within what? Time's bending sickle. Time being portrayed there like death with his sickle. But it's also what? You move that sickle around in a circle, you do that. So let's say this is me, and this is somebody else, and this is their circle of influence. Well, they intersect here. What might that intersection be, however? Rosy lips and cheeks. That's noticing other people. Specifically for me, hetero male, a woman. Love alters not. With his is probably referring to time. His brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. That's judgment day or death, till death do us part. Okay? If this be error and upon me proved, if I'm wrong and you prove it to me, I never writ nor no man ever loved. Notice the logical fallacy in that last line. He's kind of creating a syllogism of sorts. The fallacy is what? Well, I did writ. How do we know? Because we have the poem. So the speaker is saying, you can't say I'm wrong because I wrote this. Therefore, his argument is, what I've said above is also true. This poem, back in the 70s, early 80s, at least where I grew up in California, this poem was used a lot in wedding ceremonies because of the idea of love that it expresses. Okay? Now let's look at that time of year thou mayst indeed behold. Let me not to the marriage of true minds is in the first 125, it's at the end. The implication is in it that maybe the speaker and the golden-haired youth have this marriage of minds. That is, it has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with friendship. That's a possibility. The other possibility, it's about the golden-haired youth marrying someone else, and it's kind of written for that. Okay? I think it's the first one rather than the last one. The time of year thou mayst in me behold is also in 1 through 125. It's about some kind of separation between the speaker and the golden-haired youth. That time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few, to hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs, where late the sweet bird sang. We've seen images like that before. So what time of year is it when you have yellow leaves or few on the branches? Late fall. Okay? Notice the yellow leaves or few hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, the trees. Bare ruined choirs. Why? Because it's in the trees that the birds sing. Choirs refers more specifically to choir stalls in churches where choirs would sing. Okay? Where late the sweet bird sang. So that's the first image, the end of the year. Second image. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west. So when the sun goes down, what color, just after the sun goes down, what color is the sky in the west at the horizon? It's still light. There will be some orange and red and yellow, and the farther the sun goes down, the darker and darker it gets, which by and by black night doth take away. Death's second self, that is, an image of death, that seals up all in rest. Okay? Second image, the end of a day. So first one, end of the year, end of the day. Third image. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. We've seen that image before. You build a big fire, think of those winter Sundays. You build a big fire, and what does the fire do? It consumes all of that fuel. Okay? That is the fire's youth. That on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire. Because it's burned all that fuel, there's all that ash. What does that ash eventually do to those embers? It smothers them. because there's no oxygen. Consumed with that which it was nourished by. It's consumed, it's killed by the ash, which before it was ash, was wood. This thou perceivest. What's the this? You perceive all three of these images in me. The end of a year, the end of a day, the end of a fire, which makes thy love more strong. To love that well which thou must leave ere long. Notice, it's not the speaker that's leaving. It's the other one. It's not necessarily death coming, it's the death of this relationship. Something has happened that has broken up this friendship, for lack of a better word. All right, that's the last one I'm going to do. Thanks for showing up. Let me, real quickly, since you are here, give you guys points for showing up. There it is. Felix, Bailey, and Corinna. Hope the rest of your classes go well. Okay, I'll give you guys some points for showing up today. I'll get the exam posted probably today. It'll be due Sunday. If you want to wait and take it till after I grade the quizzes that are due tomorrow night, totally fine. That's what I would do. That's all. Thanks.